Could Chicago be the Monte Carlo of the Midwest? Las Vegas on the lake? Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Joel Weisman, sitting in for Phil Ponce. Over the years, Mayor Daley has run hot and cold on casino gambling in the city. Recently, though, he's been warming up again. A soft economy has the mayor thinking a casino could help close Chicago's widening budget gap. And not just a run-of-the-mill casino. No, Mayor Daley envisions a huge land-based facility, and he envisions something else. Taxpayers, not a private gaming company, owning the entire operation. Would a casino be good for Chicago's economy? What would it do to area cities like Elgin, Aurora, and Joliet, whose riverboats would almost certainly take a major hit? We'll explore these and other questions right after we hear from Rich Samuels, who takes us to one community that likes its casinos and sees Chicago as a definite threat.
Elgin on the Fox River is a prime example of how tax revenue from gambling can provide a physical jolt for a municipality in need. The Grand Victoria first greeted gamers here in October of '94. Immediately, cash started flowing into the city coffers.
I think in the first year we realized about $15 million as a community, and last year we exceeded $24 million, so it's been a tremendous boon. I would say we probably realized about $100 million in revenue that we otherwise wouldn't have had in the last 4 years.
Virtually all the proceeds have been pumped into downtown infrastructure, where public improvements have attracted private capital.
So that's the real payoff, is with all the public investment leading up to now the private investment coming in.
But what the mayor seems to have in mind for a possible Chicago casino is unique. For one thing, the city, not a corporation, would own it.
I think government should own the license. I think taxpayers should get all the profits. Simple as that. That's common sense. They've done that in Ontario. It's very successful.
The casino the mayor wants for Chicago would be in addition to what state law now sanctions.
You'd really have to both increase the number of licenses. Right now the statute limits 10 licenses, and I think that you've also got to change the statute to create an opportunity, either land-based or something that would accommodate Lake Michigan, because right now both of those things are really not part of the scheme.
Additionally, the legislature would have to raise the number of gaming positions from the present 1,200 per license. Mayor Daley reportedly wants at least 3,600. Mayor Ed Schock of Elgin sees a land-based mega casino in Chicago as a threat to his city.
I don't have a problem with the city of Chicago throwing their hat in the ring for the remaining open riverboat license. That's a level playing field.
If Chicago were to simply get a boat like our boat here with 1,200 gaming stations, it probably wouldn't hurt us very much.
But I think to completely change the whole intent of the legislation and give one community a tremendous advantage, I think would in the long run erode people's confidence in gambling in Illinois, and it opens up a tremendous can of worms from my point of view.
New competition has significantly challenged and changed Illinois casinos in the past. The advent of floating casinos in northwest Indiana in 1996 immediately cut into Illinois casino revenues. In Joliet, they dropped 25 to 30%.
And then you also had Aurora, which is a little bit farther away, which was off on average 8% during that same subsequent 12-month period. Now, as you moved over to Elgin, we actually saw a slowdown in the growth. However, we didn't actually see negative numbers posted. So clearly you can see the closer you are to the new competitor, the more impact you're going to feel.
To help out the Illinois casinos, the legislature allowed dockside gambling. No longer did the casinos have to take to the waters. Revenues jumped 30%. But now Mayor Daley proposes a rule change that could change the game unlike any previous amendment to the Gaming Act.
I should think they should do away with all the licenses and let government own them. Be very frank. Let government own those licenses.
Are the current licensees of these facilities likely to agree?
The gaming licensees who are in place in Illinois now are large, sophisticated gaming companies. They are not some of the entrepreneurs. They are sophisticated, long-time gamers, and I think you will see very organized resistance.
So where would you place your bet? Chicago Tonight, this is Rich Samuels.
Now joining us to discuss the possibility of a Chicago casino are Gerald Roper, President and CEO of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. Donna Moore, President of the International Association of Gaming Attorneys. Ms. Moore was the first Chief Counsel of the Illinois Gaming Board. Ed Schock, the Mayor of Elgin, Illinois, home of the Grand Victoria Casino. And John Kindt, Professor of Business and Legal Policy at the University of Illinois. He is one of the nation's leading opponents of legalized gambling. Gerald Roper, first of all, you're with the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. Does Chicagoland include any of the boats?
Absolutely. We cover the 6 counties of northeastern Illinois. Yes.
And tell me about what a Chicago casino would do to some of your other members.
Well, I think that first off, our chamber views this as an economic development opportunity for the region, and we are, until we see what is exactly going to come out of this, we don't know what effect it's going to have on our other members of the boats. And so I just think that we can't afford to draw our line in the sand on this issue right away. I think we need to sit down and discuss. Could be this, again, besides O'Hare Airport, the single largest economic engine for this region in many, many years.
And what exactly would it do for Chicago when you say it would be the single largest economic engine?
I see it more as economic development, not just gaming revenue. I think there are people that are already looking at that this is going to balance the budget of the city and the state. We see many residuals from this. As we continue to build McCormick Place, we've seen billions of dollars of investment that have taken place in Chicago as a result
So you're saying that people would come here to enjoy the casino, and they might stay several days because of our other attractions.
Yeah, Chicago will become a destination location for visitors coming into the city and being able to enjoy the other great cultural institutions, restaurants, retail, some of the best in the world.
Well, Mayor Schock, you have a casino in Elgin. What's the average length of time when someone goes to the casino they spend in Elgin?
Approximately 2 to 2.5 hours.
And what do they do in Elgin while they're there besides be on
They gamble and go home. That's been the experience, I think, of almost all of the riverboats, that principally people come in, they go to their boat, they gamble. If they're going to eat, they usually eat in the boat's facilities, and then they go home.
So what was all this ballyhoo that if we gave riverboats to communities, it would develop the community and they'd be spending money in the community?
It hasn't worked in that way, but it's worked in another way. The large amounts of money that the community has been able to receive has allowed those communities to reinvest in tired old infrastructure, as the piece mentioned, and now we're seeing the benefits of that because we're experiencing really tremendous private investment in our communities. But that would not have happened if we hadn't addressed infrastructure that's old, if we hadn't been able to take our proceeds from the boat and
So what it
reinvest
is, it's a revenue stream that otherwise taxpayers would have to pick up.
It's a revenue stream that, frankly, communities like Elgin, Aurora, and Joliet would not be able to have, even with taxpayers putting it up. Our communities got those boats because they're poor. We have high tax rates, relatively speaking, but because the communities are poor, they're unable to generate the dollars that would be needed to
Well, if that were the
equal
case,
kind of
though, there'd probably be dozens and dozens of casinos. There are lots of poor communities. Professor Kindt, you have written extensively about why casinos really aren't economic engines and that they're bad things.
Yeah, first of all, you called me an opponent of gambling. I'm not an opponent of gambling like most other business
You
and
like to gamble
economic people.
personally?
I have. But like most other people, I'm a proponent of good business and good economics. And what gambling does is it cannibalizes the consumer economy. It cannibalizes pre-existing tourism. This is not going to help tourism in Chicago. And you don't have to listen to me. You can listen to our former U.S. Senator, Paul Simon, who sponsored the National Gambling Impact Study Commission. This is a federal commission which came out with its report in 1999. It had pro-gambling people on it, and they unanimously called for a moratorium on the expansion of gambling of any type anywhere in the United States. They said
Explain
there's
to me
too
how
much
it
going too fast.
cannibalizes things.
Well, if people are spending $1 billion a year in gambling, that just goes into more and more gambling. It's reinvested in more gambling. That's why you hear these new ideas for expanded gambling. That's money that's coming out of cars, refrigerators, the consumer economy. It's coming out of computers, and it has a low multiplier effect. If that money was spent in the regular economy, you would have a big multiplier effect. If you want a higher stock market, if you want to pump prime the economy, do what we did 100 years ago, wipe the slate
Would that
clean.
extra money provide the same amount of tax revenue to these communities that gambling does?
We did a study back in the 1990s, maybe not to your specific
Well, Jerry says no
thing,
also.
but we did a study back in the 1990s at the University of Illinois. It wasn't my study, but it showed that you could wipe the slate clean on gambling if you raise the sales tax by, I think it was 0.25 cents or 0.2 cents. And then you wouldn't have all these cannibalization of the pre-existing economy. You're losing jobs from the feeder markets around the economy. And you should ask why they call them feeder markets. The industry itself calls them feeder markets. So it looks good for Elgin. But what's going on in the feeder market? people are taking that money, they're spending 10% less on food, 25% less on clothing, and 37% have dipped into
those
their
are
savings
only
in
the
order to
gamblers.
gamble.
Not everyone has to gamble.
Well, actually, 80% of people are in there gambling.
All the
And
time?
the oth- not necessarily all the time.
Donna Moore, first of all, welcome to you,
Thank you.
and we give you an award for your patience so far. Tell me, how many people do gamble, and does the Association of Gaming Attorneys believe that gambling cannibalizes our economy?
I don't think that's the association's view at all. I mean, people go to gamble. They usually allot a certain amount of entertainment dollars that they're going to spend, and whether they spend it at a movie or at a play or whether they enjoy gambling, they go and they spend the allotted amount of money that they have allocated, and they enjoy themselves. I think that the experience that we've had in the state of Illinois, and the mayor can comment on this as well, is that gambling currently has been very economically beneficial for the communities where it's located and to the state as a whole based on the tax revenues.
But wait a minute, this according to you, there is no such thing as an addicted gambler. It's like I'm home with my wife and I say, should we go to the symphony tonight, or you want to go to a riverboat?
I think there is, listen, the gaming industry itself has been in the forefront of addressing the problem of compulsive gambling. And there is a small portion of the population that may have a gaming problem, and to that extent, the industry has spent a lot of money to help address that problem. I think whether it's private-owned or government-owned, everybody's going to have to address the problem of compulsive gambling.
I have to jump in here on this because this is what we've been hearing for years. These are the same old arguments, the same old window dressing from the industry. And the National Gambling Impact Study Commission called for the recriminalization of convenience gambling, video gambling machines. That's 80 to 90% of the money that's going into the casinos. And there are 27% to 55% of the dollars that are dropped in the casino are coming out of pathological and problem gambling.
Let me just get one thing straight. Your argument is strictly economic. What do you say, though, about the argument about morality and also the criminal arguments, which some people say gambling's immoral, some people say it adds to crime?
Well, I think we're beyond that because we have a lottery here in Illinois. And I did go back to one of your points, the fact that you can say to your wife, should we go to the boat or should we go to the symphony? You have a choice. And what the professor's trying to do, and he can hold that report up because, Joe, you know, and the rest of us know, there are millions of those reports sitting in Washington, D.C., the state of Illinois, and even Mayor Daley said in the city of Chicago, we're tired of these type of studies. We've got to move economic development in our communities. This is just one portion.
That's a public relations argument.
Crime
That's
was one of
not
the biggest
academic.
concerns of Elginites when we contemplated having a boat. We are at a 6-year low in crime. The crime rate now...
Because of the boat?
No, my point is crime has not gone up. Crime has been a non-factor.
You're looking...
Okay.
There were predictions of prostitution. It never occurred.
Okay, that's good to know. Let's talk a little bit more with Ms. Moore. When you were on the gaming board, and I think you had something to do with drafting our current gaming law, the key phrase in there is that it was drafted to assist economic development and tourism in the state of Illinois. Why would putting a land-based casino in Chicago not be right exactly within line with those goals?
I think it would be in line with those goals. I think that the success of the Chicago casino, based on our experience, we can assume will be great. And I think that success is dependent on 3 things. I think it's dependent on competition. I think it's dependent on legislation and regulation and on public policy. And as for competition, I think that everybody has to play on a level playing field. And whether it's government-owned or private-owned, everybody has to operate under the same set of rules.
If there's a private-owned, I mean, if there's a government-owned casino in Chicago, then all these private-owned ones and these riverboats have to turn in their licenses and become government-owned?
No, but they have to operate under the same set of regulations and rules. So, for instance, I think one of the issues that has to be addressed is if Chicago's going to be land-based, if they're going to have X amount of gaming positions, if the tax rate is nothing for a government-owned casino, then I think that the privately owned casinos have to be placed on similar footing. I think you know,
Well, how would you do that? I don't understand.
Well, I think
in
you
other
have
words, eliminate the taxes on the private casinos?
No, but I think you have to come up with a formula that somehow accounts for the fact that private casinos are paying a 50% tax rate.
All right,
To get the Chicago casino, you're going to have legislative changes.
Right.